There is a new icon at the top center of your main calendar between the balance and your account name. Tapping on this brings you into the new bank reconciling screen. In the top half of the screen are transactions from your bank account that need to be reconciled with transactions in CalendarBudget. We can see that there are 3 transactions that need to be reconciled and 1 in green that is already matching the correct date and amount. In the bottom half of the screen, we see the CalendarBudget transactions that correspond to the same date range as the transactions that we are trying to reconcile in the top half. Beginning at the top of the bank transactions, we see the first one for Metro is on February the 1st. There isn't a corresponding transaction in CalendarBudget, so this was an unplanned transaction. So all we need to do is add that transaction to our CalendarBudget list. To do that, we'll just click the plus sign to the right of the transaction. We can see that the name, amount, and date, and the category have already been preset for us. So all we need to do is click OK. That transaction will then be added to CalendarBudget, and both will disappear from our reconciling list. So this list always shows the remaining transactions that need to be reconciled. The next transaction on the list, California Tie at the very top, was already planned in CalendarBudget. You can see at the top of the CalendarBudget transactions list. It's already on the same date. It just has a slightly different amount, which is why it hasn't matched up. To make those match, we'll select the transaction at the top and at the bottom, and then click the check mark at the top right of the screen. That'll open this Update Transaction dialog where it compares the details and lets us know that what we're doing is updating the amount. And when we click OK, both transactions again will disappear from the list since they are now fully reconciled. The next scenario is slightly trickier. Our transaction for Metro coming in from our bank actually was split across 2 transactions in CalendarBudget. We did plan the first one, which was a sandwich, on the 6th, but we had another plan to get paper towel on the 8th, and we just decided to do them both at the same time at the same store. So what we want to do to split this transaction is to select the transaction at the top, also select both of those transactions that we want to merge with the bank transaction in the bottom half, and then click the check mark at the top right. This will open a confirmation dialog showing us that we're taking that bank transaction and splitting it across 2 transactions in CalendarBudget. Now it shows us the title, the date, the amount, and what the amount should be for the split. We know that the full amount of the transaction was $25.98 in our bank. So if I enter $10 for the sandwich, it automatically calculates the remaining amount for the second piece of the transaction, which is the paper towel. It also tells me with that strike through of the date that the transaction is being moved from the 8th to the 6th. I can then click the check mark to confirm that, and then all of those transactions disappear from our reconciling list since they are now fully reconciled. The remaining transaction at the top, called Plan, is already green, which means there is already a matching transaction in our CalendarBudget list. However, if we look down in CalendarBudget transactions, we see a transaction called Miscellaneous Expense on the 17th, and there's no corresponding transaction in the bank. That means that we had planned this transaction in CalendarBudget, but it never occurred in real life. We have 2 options here. We can move this transaction to the future if it is still planned by swiping to the left and clicking this calendar icon to just choose a future date. Or we can delete the transaction, which is what I'm going to do in this case. We just click the trash icon on the right, delete the transaction, and then CalendarBudget tells us that we are finished with a woohoo screen telling us that we are all finished reconciling.